It all started on a company trip to Miami. 3 days, 4 nights of back-to-back brand pitches, cocktail mixers, and rooftop dinners with high-end clients. I was 26, a marketing assistant at a mid-sized creative agency called Ascent. I'd been grinding for 3 years, taking weekend courses in analytics, staying late on pitch decks no one asked me to work on. I wasn't flashy or loud like the others, but I was dependable, smart, invisible in all the ways that make corporate life tolerable. But I was proud of what I'd built. I had just proposed to Emily a month before the trip. She said yes with tears in her eyes. We'd been together 4 years, college sweethearts. She was everything I'd ever wanted. Sharp, warm, a little sarcastic in public, but soft when it was just us. She was a UI designer at a startup and knew how to read people. I trusted her judgment more than I trusted my own. My boss, Darren Lane, was the type of guy who made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. Early 40s, sharp jaw, gelled hair, tailored suits, charming as hell. He could sell a napkin to a waiter. Clients loved him. Executives worshipped him. He called me Mikey, even though I hated it, and he knew. But I smiled through it because, well, I was playing the game. Emily had never met Darren until that Miami trip. She tagged along because I had some downtime after the last day, and we figured we'd make a mini vacation out of it. She arrived the second evening, right before the networking dinner. I remember how she walked into the hotel lobby, blue summer dress, sun-kissed skin, big grin, and Darren's eyes flicked up from his phone. "This must be the famous Emily," he said with a grin. "Mike, you never told me you were dating out of your league." Emily laughed. I chuckled too, out of habit. That moment, I didn't think much of it. Just another smooth line from a guy who probably flirted with his own reflection. But something shifted that weekend. The next 2 days, Darren started lingering around us more. He'd suggest restaurants the three of us should try. He always picked up the check, complimented Emily's ideas on design, even brought her into casual business convos, like she was part of the agency. At first, I thought he was just being generous. Then I started catching little things, like how Emily suddenly stopped holding my hand when Darren was around, or how she laughed a little too long at his jokes. One night, I came down from our hotel room to grab ice and caught them alone at the bar. She looked guilty. He looked amused. On the flight home, she was distant. A week later, she told me we needed to talk. We sat across from each other in our small apartment's kitchen. She couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm not happy, Mike," she started, voice trembling. "I haven't been for a while." I tried to ignore it, but Miami made things clear for me. I felt cold. She took a deep breath and said it. "I'm seeing Darren." My brain refused to catch up to the words. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "He's what?" I finally said, the air thick between us. She reached for my hand. I pulled it back. "It wasn't planned," she said quickly. "We just connected. He makes me feel seen. You've been so focused on work, your future, your plans. I don't think you ever saw me." I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I sat there frozen. Betrayal has a weight to it. It doesn't crash in like a wave. It settles in your lungs like smoke. "I didn't want it to happen this way," she said softly, as if that made it better. "We're going to keep things quiet for now. He doesn't want to affect your job." How thoughtful. I stood up, numb. She started crying. I didn't say a word. I grabbed my keys, walked out the door, and didn't come back. The next day, I submitted my resignation. I didn't explain why. No dramatic confrontation. No begging. No threats. Just a 2-line email, a box of my things, and silence. They were welcome to each other. Everyone at the office thought I left because I couldn't handle the pressure. Darren made some joke about losing young talent to burnout at the next team meeting, according to someone who still talked to me. Emily deleted most of our photos on Instagram and went full rebrand, sunsets, rooftop selfies, vague captions about growth and clarity. I didn't like or comment, didn't say a word, but I watched, and quietly, I started over. After I left Ascent, I didn't tell anyone where I went, didn't post about it, didn't text people back right away. I moved out of the apartment Emily and I shared and crashed on my cousin's couch for a month until I found a studio across town. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls, a desk, and a mattress on the floor, but it was mine. Quiet. Blank. I needed blank. I told people I was taking time off. Figuring things out. It wasn't a lie. I just didn't tell them what I was figuring. No one from Ascent reached out, not really. A few coworkers messaged me on LinkedIn, standard stuff like, "Hey, saw you left. Hope all is good." Even they didn't ask why. Maybe they knew. Maybe they didn't care. Either way, I let them think what they wanted. Emily never tried to call. I didn't block her, either. She posted pictures occasionally, always smiling, always with just enough crop to not show who was taking them. But once I caught a glimpse of a watch, Darren's watch, black leather, gold face. The guy was subtle, but not that subtle. It burned at first. Not the jealousy. I don't think I missed her, not really, but the insult of it. The gall. My boss. My fiancé. My life's work, all in one stroke. And they were walking around like they hadn't just gutted me in broad daylight. But I didn't rage. Didn't spiral. Instead, I started running. Mornings, before the sun came up. 5 miles to clear my head, sweat out the bitterness. I listened to podcasts on growth marketing, branding strategy, emerging markets. I took online courses. Not the cheap ones. I spent real money. Studied like it was my full-time job. Because it was. I started scribbling ideas on the wall with sticky notes. Niche markets, product pain points, influencer outreach angles. At night, I mapped them into a pitch deck. Nothing fancy, PowerPoint, black background, white font. I didn't need flash. I needed clarity. I knew I wanted to build something of my own. But I didn't want to do what Ascent was doing. I wanted to do what they ignored. You see, Ascent catered to polished tech firms and enterprise software clients. Big fish with big egos. But they had a blind spot. The scrappy startups in specialized industries, agri-tech, logistics automation, micro SaaS platforms. They thought it was beneath them. I knew otherwise. I'd worked on those accounts. I saw the budgets. I saw the pain points. I saw what they needed and what Ascent failed to deliver. So, I built a prototype agency model around that. Low overhead, high-touch service. Founder-friendly. Nimble. Data-driven. I gave it a name that didn't sound like it came from a corporate branding manual. Northfield Creative. Clean, grounded, no buzzwords. I didn't rent office space. Didn't hire anyone yet. I used a co-working spot twice a week, worked from home the rest. I built a simple site, set up my portfolio, and created 3 fictional case studies, loosely based on past client work, but anonymous enough to avoid NDAs. And then, I waited. Quietly, I started sending out feelers. DM'd a few startup founders on Reddit and LinkedIn. Offered a free audit on their current marketing strategy, just to open the door. No pressure. Some said no, but some said yes. And once I got in, I over-delivered. Detailed reports, revamped campaigns, tangible lift in engagement within a week. I didn't sleep much. Didn't go out. Just worked. Learned. Adjusted. One founder referred me to another. Then another. By month 4, I had 3 paying clients on retainer. Small but steady. Enough to upgrade from the air mattress. Enough to stop checking my bank account every 3 hours. I still didn't post online. No victory lap. No started my own agency announcement. Just a quiet website and satisfied clients. A couple of former Ascent clients followed me on LinkedIn. I didn't reach out, but I noticed. Around this time, I ran into Darren and Emily again. Total accident. They were walking into a rooftop restaurant downtown while I was leaving from a client dinner across the street. Emily saw me first. Her smile froze a little. Darren caught my eye, gave me that smirk he always wore, like he'd just won something. "Mike," he called across the sidewalk like we were buddies. "Heard you took some time off. Good for you, man. Self-care." Emily gave a weak wave. I nodded politely. "I've been meaning to reach out," Darren continued. "There's a junior strategist opening if you're looking to get back in. Happy to put in a word." I held his gaze for a moment, just long enough for the silence to feel like something. "Appreciate that," I said. "But I'm good." He smiled like he didn't believe me. "All right. Well, don't disappear on us, Mikey." He turned, hand on Emily's back, and disappeared into the restaurant. I stood there a second longer, then walked away. I didn't hate them. I just wasn't done yet. By the 6th month, things started shifting. I wasn't doing anything flashy. No press, no interviews, no big campaigns. Just consistent results. Word of mouth. Small startup communities talk, especially when something actually works. My clients were tight-knit founders, real builders, not the clout-chasing type. They had friends with funding, products, and the same marketing pain points. Northfield became a whisper. The good kind. I never mentioned Ascent. Not once. Didn't need to. But one day, I noticed something strange. A founder I'd spoken to months earlier, someone I'd sent a strategy outline to, suddenly went cold. No replies. I figured he'd moved on. But then I saw on LinkedIn that he'd just signed with Ascent. His startup was featured in one of their success stories. I dug into it. Same campaign framework I'd outlined. Almost word for word. I stared at the screen and laughed. That's how it was going to be? Okay. I didn't reach out. Didn't say a word. Just took it as confirmation. I was officially on their radar. The signs started to pile up after that. A few weeks later, I got a text from Zoe, a copywriter I used to work with. She freelanced for Ascent now and then. Hey, random question. Did you pitch a logistics startup called FreightGrid recently? I told her yes, about 2 months ago. She replied, weird. Darren asked me to write taglines for a campaign this week and showed me some docs. Your name wasn't on them, but the framework looks familiar. I told her not to worry about it. No drama. But inside, I was smiling. They weren't just aware of me. They were watching, trying to follow the trail, replicate it. But they didn't know the source. They couldn't see the full picture because they still saw me as Mikey the assistant. And that's why they were already behind. Then came the podcast. A niche startup-focused show invited one of my clients, an agri-tech founder named Jo, to talk about her growth. She mentioned Northfield Creative by name. Said we completely transformed her brand positioning. I didn't even know she was doing the interview until after it aired. Apparently, someone at Ascent heard it, too. Because the following week, Jo forwarded me an email. Subject, Alternative Agency Opportunity, Ascent Creative. It was from Darren. Polite, professional, full of flattery. He praised her company, said he loved what she was building, and offered to explore a partnership that could take her growth to the next level. Jo replied with a single sentence. Already found someone who does. She BCC'd me on it. That one hit different. I didn't respond. Just screenshotted it, saved it in a folder I'd started keeping, labeled receipts. Things got messy from there. Another startup founder I'd been working with told me in a Zoom call, funny thing, someone from a bigger agency tried to poach us last week. They offered us a full rebrand at half the price, but they couldn't tell us what we actually needed. Just buzzwords. I didn't even have to ask who it was. Then came the design glitch. One morning, I got an alert from my web host. Someone tried to access the backend of Northfield's site using admin-level credentials. It didn't work, but it pinged me. I checked the IP, ran it through a tracker. Guess where it was logged? Ascent's headquarters. Same city, same street, same damn building. I didn't say a word. Just updated my security protocols and smiled. I still hadn't posted publicly. Still hadn't marketed Northfield beyond my own network. My client list was growing, slow, steady, intentional. I didn't want the wrong attention. I wanted confusion, suspicion, whispers, and I was getting them. A month later, I heard from Zoe again. So, not to gossip, but things are getting weird at Ascent. I asked her what she meant. Darren's been paranoid. Keeps asking if anyone knows who's behind Northfield. He's convinced it's someone who used to work here. He even asked me if it was you. I paused. What did you say? I said I hadn't talked to you in forever. Which is technically true, until now. I laughed. Appreciate it. Honestly, I hope it is you. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Their vibe is off. Desperate. Darren's snapping at people. Emily doesn't even show up to meetings anymore. I didn't reply right away. Then I said, that's too bad. And then, the cracks widened. Ascent lost a major client, their biggest. A mid-sized fintech app that Darren personally handled for years. Quiet exit, no public announcement. But I found out through the grapevine. A week later, that same fintech app followed Northfield on LinkedIn. Didn't reach out. Didn't message me. But they knew. That's when I started getting calls from recruiters. Not entry-level stuff, agency directors, brand heads, VP titles. People I'd only seen from a distance before. They didn't know where I'd come from, but they wanted in. I keep hearing about Northfield. We've seen a shift in some of our competitors' clients. Was that your work? We're looking for someone who can cut through the noise. I took the calls, listened, politely declined. I didn't want to join someone else's ship. I was building mine. From the outside, I was just a guy who bounced back, moved on, took the high road, maybe a little lucky, maybe unusually focused. But behind the scenes, I was everywhere they didn't expect me to be, and nowhere they could touch. By the end of the year, Ascent was noticeably quieter, not just on social media, but in general. No new launches, no wins to boast about. Their content pipeline, once consistent, started repeating itself. The same graphics, the same tone, even the same client names recycled in new formats. I kept track, casually, without obsessing. I didn't need to obsess. The same clients they were losing were now coming to me directly, and I didn't have to chase them. They came with polite emails and quiet phone calls, often starting with something like, "We heard you're the one who understands companies like ours." I didn't correct them. I just listened, asked the right questions, and delivered what they needed. Simple, unemotional. That's what made it work. It started becoming obvious to people in their orbit. I didn't hear it directly from Darren or anyone high up, of course, but through former coworkers, freelancers, and secondhand conversations that floated back to me in pieces. One told me they had a client in the agri-tech space that suddenly pulled out of a contract just weeks before a major campaign. Another said the office vibe had shifted, people were being watched more closely, meetings were growing tense, and Darren wasn't speaking to most of the team unless he had to. Emily had apparently stopped coming in regularly altogether. I didn't ask anyone to confirm that. I didn't really care where she was anymore. One day, I got a LinkedIn message from a former client of Ascent's, someone I had only met briefly during my time there. We weren't close, but I remembered he ran a logistics startup that always got pushed to the side because Darren didn't think the brand was exciting enough. The message was short. He said he'd heard I'd started my own agency and asked if I had time to talk. I called him that afternoon. On the phone, he was clear. He didn't want fluff, didn't want the usual corporate strategy pitch. He just wanted results. He told me that the last agency he worked with wasted 6 months and left him in a worse position. I knew who he meant, but I didn't say it. I told him I could help, and 2 weeks later, we signed a 6-month contract. No discounts, no begging, just quiet confidence. Clients like him didn't want to be impressed. They wanted someone who didn't overpromise and didn't disappear. I did exactly what I said I would. I stayed behind the scenes, focused on execution, and let the results speak for themselves. I built custom dashboards to show them what was changing in real time. When the campaign performed well, they told their peers. When it overperformed, they told investors. When it changed their business, they told everyone else. I wasn't scaling fast. I didn't want to. I took what I could handle and gave each one full attention. Word spread slowly, but steadily. Meanwhile, Ascent began tightening up. I saw job listings disappear from their site. A developer I'd worked with there told me they laid off 3 people and told the rest not to speak about it. Another strategist I knew said they were told to drop their hourly rate or risk losing freelance work. All of this came in fragments. I didn't ask for any of it. People volunteered the information like it was gossip, but it sounded more like confession. I let them talk. Then someone at a startup I'd been courting forwarded me an email they had received from Darren. It was long, overly flattering, and positioned Ascent as a refreshed, retooled agency ready for the next wave of innovation. It was the same language they used on their pitch decks when I worked there. Darren had written lines almost identical to that before. But this time, the person on the other end wasn't buying it. They sent me the entire message and asked if I had time for a quick call the next week. I said yes. This was happening more often. I wasn't advertising. I hadn't made a single public statement about Ascent or Darren or Emily. I never even hinted at the reason I left. But the gaps they created were becoming my entry points. Every client they couldn't hold on to, every promise they didn't fulfill, every campaign that fell flat became a quiet door opening in my direction. I didn't have to push. I just had to be there when it happened. One afternoon, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year. Zoe, the copywriter I used to work with, told me she'd finally quit. She said the energy in the office had turned toxic and no one trusted anyone anymore. She said Darren was convinced someone on the inside had been leaking information. Not about personal stuff. He wasn't worried about Emily, but about clients, positioning, pitch angles, and trends. She laughed about it because, in her words, he's paranoid enough to think someone's out to destroy him, but too proud to believe it could be someone he underestimated. I didn't say much. I just let her talk. She told me something else that stuck with me. Apparently, Darren had started asking around about me again. He'd told someone that he thought I had landed a couple of former clients only because I had personal dirt on them, that I was probably overpromising and would burn out, that I was lucky. I asked Zoe if she believed that. She said no. Then she said something quieter. Honestly, you made the right call walking away. They don't even know what they're fighting against now. I didn't need to hear more than that. A week later, I walked by the building where Ascent used to host their client mixers. It was mostly empty now. The lights were on, but only a few people were inside. I stood across the street for a minute, watching through the tinted windows. I saw Darren pacing around on his phone. He looked frustrated, even from a distance. No one else in the room seemed to be paying much attention to him. He was talking, but they were already looking at their screens. That was the first time I let myself think, clearly, that he was losing. And the best part was, he still didn't know how. He thought the damage was coming from somewhere obvious, something he could point to, confront, or crush. But there was nothing for him to see. No name on a billboard. No viral post. No competitor trashing him online. Just a quiet agency with no address on its homepage, gaining ground in the exact places he never thought to protect. I walked away before he could look up. I didn't need him to see me. Not yet. About a month after that, I got an email from an address I hadn't seen in over a year. It was Emily. The subject line just said, "Coffee?" I stared at it for a while. She hadn't contacted me since the short phone call months back when she hinted things with Darren were falling apart. That had been polite, restrained, like she wasn't sure why she was even reaching out. But this time, she added a time and a place, Tuesday at 10, a coffee shop in the business district, and wrote, "Just want to talk." No expectations. I didn't reply. I just showed up. She was already there when I walked in, hair shorter than I remembered, sitting with both hands wrapped around a mug like she was bracing for something. When she saw me, she gave a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I wasn't sure if you'd come. I figured it'd be easier than ignoring you again." She didn't push back on that. Just nodded. There was a pause before she started talking. She said she'd left Darren officially, that she moved out 3 weeks ago and was staying with her sister for now. I didn't ask why. She told me anyway. Said the agency was collapsing from the inside out, and he was unbearable to be around. Paranoid, bitter, always convinced someone was sabotaging him, but never willing to admit he had lost control of his own company. She said he spent most of his time obsessing over clients that left, replaying old conversations, rewriting narratives where none of it was his fault. "And he blames you," she added quietly, "even though he doesn't have proof. He's convinced you're behind it." I nodded, but didn't say anything. She leaned forward a little. "Are you?" I looked at her for a second. She still wore that same expression she had the night she told me about Darren in our kitchen, like she wanted to be seen as honest without actually being accountable. Like if she looked vulnerable enough, it would all just reset. I finally said, "Does it matter?" She blinked, but didn't argue. I finished my coffee and stood up. She asked if I wanted to keep in touch. I told her no. Then I walked out. That was the last time I saw her. A few days later, I received a message from an investor I'd spoken to earlier in the year. We hadn't gone into detail back then. I wasn't ready. But now he said he had a few founders in his portfolio who were unhappy with their agencies and were open to exploring alternatives. 2 of them had been with Ascent. I told them I'd take the meetings. The truth was, none of this had happened overnight. It wasn't a revenge fantasy. It was work. Long, focused, meticulous work. It started the day I walked out of that office and deleted every contact that wasn't useful. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I didn't argue. I just observed. I paid attention to what clients wanted and what Ascent failed to give them. I took mental notes on their habits, the weaknesses in their processes, the overcomplications they passed off as sophistication. I didn't copy what they did. I stripped it down and did the opposite. While they were focused on brand fluff, I focused on clean execution. While they obsessed over image, I obsessed over results. I found the clients they didn't take seriously, the industries they considered too small or too boring, and I made those clients feel like they were the only ones who mattered. I didn't sell dreams. I sold clarity. And behind it all, I made sure nothing ever traced back to me in a way Darren could use. My website didn't show a face. My name was nowhere on the homepage. My LinkedIn listed me as a freelancer. Northfield Creative operated entirely through referrals and quiet trust. I didn't need billboards. I needed conversations. The kind that happened in conference rooms after a bad quarter or on phone calls between founders who'd just been disappointed by the same overpaid agency. Everything Darren thought was slipping away from him was already gone before he noticed. By the time he started chasing, he wasn't trying to compete with a new player. He was trying to catch up to a shadow. It all came to a head when a mid-sized startup Ascent had courted for almost a year publicly announced their new agency partner, Northfield Creative. They made the post themselves. I didn't ask for it, but it was clean, polite, and the caption read, "Excited to be working with a team that actually listens." The likes piled up. A few came from current Ascent clients. I didn't gloat. I didn't even comment. But I knew Darren saw it. A week later, someone sent me a screenshot from a Slack message at Ascent. Darren had apparently told his team to no longer mention or engage with that name in any capacity. They didn't say my name. Just that name. That was enough. The last step was a small move, but it felt right. I bought a small office space. Nothing flashy. Just a quiet building on the edge of downtown with a clear view of the city. One room. Glass door. Clean desk. I had the Northfield name put on the window. Simple font. No logo. A few days after it went up, I left a single envelope at the Ascent front desk. No return address. Inside was a printed page of that first campaign strategy Darren had stolen from me. The one I'd sent months before he poached the client, and a short note on the bottom in clean, black ink. "I didn't need to take anything from you. You handed it all over yourself." That was it. I walked out, turned the corner, and never looked back. I didn't need applause. I just needed him to know.